Well, former interim treasurer Mandla Maleka also claims there's a deliberate purge of black professionals by CEO Andre de Ruyter and the Eskom board. The employee of 2 decades took the power utility to the Commission for Conciliation, Mediation and Arbitration. It's after he was overlooked for a top position. Now, Maleka alleges the job was given to somebody else with less experience who also had a close relationship with the Eskom CEO. He joins me now. Mr. Maleka, good evening to you, and thanks for your time. Now, your matter has been ongoing for some time because you raised issue with it you raised issue within Eskom last year already when you were contesting how you were overlooked, at least according to your own point of view, for the position of Eskom treasurer.
Yes, good evening, Catherine, and good evening to your viewers. Yes, I think I am a best fit case for racism at Eskom. After serving Eskom tirelessly for 21 unbroken years, last year on the 27th of April, Freedom Day for that matter, I was told I was unsuccessful. This after acting for 8 months at the end of the day. Now, I want to take you back. Eskom as a whole and Eskom treasurer has never had a black African treasurer for that matter. I've spent 20 years cultivating the culture to become a competent treasurer for 20 years with a master's degree. When the opportunity came, I was found to be not good enough, and therefore I was cast aside. Remember, I said Eskom has never had any African treasurer. This was a missed opportunity. You'll be surprised again. Secondly, all the black executives in Eskom treasury, as I speak now, they are not your typical executive managers. They are called specialist executives, such that when they leave Eskom treasury, they leave that position. All the ones that have ever served Eskom treasury at a senior executive level were never specialists, but were labeled as executive band managers. Now, I'm submitting myself that after a rigorous process of interviews and me acting for 8 months, I said, Eskom, give me a reason why was I never appointed. They have failed dismally. After attending the interviews on the 11th of December 2019, I asked for the score sheet. To my surprise and organization of that side, there was no score sheet. They didn't even score a person. And yet, through my persistent asks, they told me I came number 3. Based on what? No facts, no scores, and I've taken the issue to grievance, chaired by Advocate Nalani, and I went on to Conciliation, chaired by Commissioner Elena, and then I went to Arbitration, chaired by Commissioner Joyce. Now, the interesting part here is that the first 2 chairs, that is now Nalane and Joyce, are both African and they are both black. They both dismissed my case. Surprisingly, the Conciliation Commissioner, who was white and a woman, warned Eskom that Eskom, you have abused Mr. Maleka. You're not going to win your case, come to arbitration. And Comrade Vavi was representing me in that conciliation meeting. He can testify to this. Now, is it surprising that your very black African individuals, they throw the case out and the conciliation says, you've got a point here. You've been abused. That was ignored severely by Eskom. So I feel for Soli, to a very large extent, that he has to be fired with me, I had to take a package and go on early retirement at 56 when I still had an energy of an 18-year-old that could run that Eskom treasure. Now, when it comes to qualification, the requirements were that we require a finance degree with a postgrad. Those were the basic requirements. As I said, I've got a master's degree in economics, having reached that in 1993. And then it stated that as an added advantage, you should have a CASA. Now, when I asked the question, they said you do not have the CASA. Then my counter argument was that it was not a prerequisite, it was an added advantage. But besides, let me take you back to the history of Eskom treasurers. Two of the most successful Eskom treasurers have been white, and they both had economics as their background. I'm talking about Dr. Koch, who went on to become the chief financial officer of Eskom. When I joined Eskom in 1999, it was Mr. Johan van den Berg, who had an honors in economics, that ran that machine so fluently. Both had economics. Now, when has this suddenly changed that a CASA is a requirement?
Sorry, Mr. Maleka, let me just come in there. And because all of these issues are issues that you have raised through the multiple processes that you have been undergoing. Now, in terms of the Eskom internal process, Advocate Nalani, senior counsel, was mandated to look into your matter and deal with the grievance. And you have said that they basically dismissed the allegation, but you're insinuating that they didn't give you fair hearing. What motive would Advocate Nalani have to do that, given the fact that obviously how he does his job has a bearing on himself and his own integrity?
Well, we should equally distribute the question to the Conciliation Commissioner and the Arbitration Commissioner. I want to know what motive, but I stress the point that the first one was a black African and the last one was a black African. The middle one is a white African woman.
So the difficulty is that the picture that you're painting is that the officials that were presiding over your matters, which were black, seem to dismiss what you had to say. That's what you said earlier on in this interview. And I'm asking you, what motive would they have to do that? Why are you not necessarily seeing it as just a difference of opinion from different legal entities or legal minds, which is not unusual to have happen, especially in a case such as this?
Look, I won't say they had a motive, but whoever pays the piper calls the tune. That's where I will end at the end of the day.
But that's an allegation. What allegation are you making against these officials? Please clarify and be clear about the allegation that you're making, because you're taking it further. He who pays the piper plays the tune. So who paid who in order to get your case dismissed? That's an allegation that you're making.
Yeah, well, if it's an allegation, then it's unfortunate. But I'm saying, if I look at the trend, it surprises me that Eskom, having never heard a black African treasurer, yes, there was an opportunity, and they failed to rise to the occasion. The time is very limited here, Kefi, I'll tell you. We wrote volumes and volumes to disprove their processes of Mr. Nalani. When I wrote to him 2 pages of my dissatisfaction, he responded and said, we can take it up to CCMA. That shocked me. Similar with the arbitration. When I lost it, now you can take it up for review at the labor court. And yet, on the conciliation, the lady being white said, Eskom, you are wrong. And if we go on to arbitration, you're going to lose. And I've accepted the results. I've moved. I've resigned at Eskom at the end of February because I do not have the capital, 200,000 rand to go and take this thing to review.
Is it not a case of sour grapes for you?
No, not at all. Not at all. Not at all. And Eskom knows, because in the 8 months that I acted, everything was smooth, nothing broke. In fact, for 8 months, I raised more capital than any other treasurer that has ever scaled the corridors of Eskom treasury.
So, Mr. Maleka, you know, in terms of the kind of answers that you said you tried to get from Eskom that they simply weren't forthcoming on, what would they need to provide in terms of information to assure you that the person that they hired was in fact the better candidate, and that you weren't overlooked simply because you are a black professional?
Katie, you're opening now a can of worms a little bit. Now, let me tell you, there were two processes. The first one was on the 11th of December, 2019. By that time, I was acting for 3 months, okay? They were not happy. They could have told me after the 11th of December, I honestly would have stopped acting. So I was a convenient tool for them to continue to go and look for somebody else once I was a caretaker. On the second round of interviews, how do you explain this? The CEO of Eskom is sitting with 2 white middle-aged males at the end of the day. Something is wrong here. He never said on my interview, or rather the interviews of the 11th of December. That to me clearly is racism at its best. One of the interviewees, by the way, had worked with the CE at both NEMPEC and SASO. Now, do we have an HR? Do we have a CFO here? And to which the portfolio of treasurer reports? My answer is no, we don't have.
All right.
Now, I think, Kathy, I've made it very clear. There were 2 processes, one where individuals were never scored. I was part of that, and there was a second process with 2 white men, middle-aged men, and with the CEO of Eskom sitting in those interviews. Conflict of interest.
All right. Let's leave it there for tonight. Former Eskom interim treasurer Mandla Maleka, those are the allegations that he is making in terms of saying that, well, racism at Eskom is prevalent, and that, you know, the allegation is that black professionals in particular are being purged. So the Eskom CEO Andre de Ruyter will be joining my colleague Xolani Mbanjwa. We'll talk about the continuous load shedding, and hopefully Xolani will also be able to get a response to these allegations.